Good evening, and welcome. If you're settling in for the night, finding a comfortable position, letting the day's tensions begin to fade, you're in the right place. Tonight, we're taking a journey, not a hurried one, not an exciting adventure filled with danger and drama. No. Tonight, we're doing something different. We're slowing down. We're stepping back through time, almost 2,000 years, to a world that moved at a different pace. We're traveling to ancient Rome, but not the Rome you might imagine. We're not visiting the gleaming marble forums where senators debate the fate of the Republic. We're not entering the Colosseum to watch gladiators fight. We're not climbing the Palatine Hill to peek into imperial palaces. No. Tonight, we're going somewhere much quieter, much more ordinary, and in its own way, much more real. We're going to spend a day at a mill, a small grain mill on the outskirts of the city, where the urban neighborhoods begin to thin out and give way to farms and fields, where you can still hear the noise of Rome in the distance, but where life follows a different rhythm, the rhythm of work, of stone turning against stone, of grain becoming flour, of one day following another in an endless comforting pattern. The man we're following today is named Marcus Aurelius Silvanus. Though that's quite formal, most people just call him Marcus, or Marcus the Miller. Names in Rome can be complicated things. The three-part name, the praenomen, nomen, and cognomen, is traditionally reserved for Roman citizens, and Marcus is indeed a citizen now. But he wasn't always. Marcus was born into slavery. His mother was a household slave in a moderately wealthy home. He never knew his father. As a child, Marcus worked in that same household, doing whatever tasks were assigned to him, fetching water, cleaning, running errands. As he grew older and stronger, he was assigned to heavier work. It wasn't a terrible life, as slavery went. His master wasn't particularly cruel, but it wasn't freedom either. When Marcus was in his late 20s, his master died. In the will, several slaves were manumitted, granted their freedom. Marcus was one of them. Perhaps his master had been fond of him. Perhaps it was a gesture of generosity, a way to show piety to the gods. Perhaps it was simply practical. Freeing slaves in a will was common enough among Romans of a certain class. Whatever the reason, Marcus found himself, quite suddenly, a free man. Freedom, though, is just the beginning. You still need to eat. You still need a place to live. You still need to work. Marcus had no particular trade, no special skills. But he was strong and he was willing to learn. He found work with a miller, a man who operated several mills around Rome. Marcus hauled sacks. He learned to manage the donkeys that turned the millstones. He learned about grain, how to judge its quality, how much water it contained, how to grind it properly. After several years, Marcus had saved enough money to purchase his own mill. Well, not enough to buy it outright. He had to borrow money as well, and he spent years paying off that debt. But eventually, the mill was his, truly his. Property that he owned and a business that he operated. For a former slave, this was extraordinary. This was the dream. Now, at 43 years old, Zarton, Marcus has been operating his mill for about 12 years. He's married to Livia, a free woman like himself. They have 2 children, Cornelia, age 7, and Titus, age 5. They live in a modest house attached to the mill itself, in a neighborhood where freedmen and working people of modest means make their homes. It's not a wealthy area, but it's respectable, safe. The streets are maintained. There's a public fountain nearby. Small shops line the main road. The mill itself sits in a covered structure, open on the seas to allow air circulation, but roofed with tile to protect the equipment from rain. The millstones are the heart of everything. 2 massive pieces of volcanic rock, each weighing hundreds of pounds. The lower stone, called the meter, is shaped like a cone, wide at the base and tapering upward. The upper stone, the catillus, is the distinctive hourglass shape that characterizes Roman mills, wider at the top and bottom, narrow in the middle, where it fits around the cone of the meter. These stones were expensive. They are made of volcanic basalt from quarries in the hills around Rome. The stone must be hard enough to grind grain without crumbling, but porous enough to create friction. Too smooth, and the grain just slides around without being crushed. Too rough, and it tears the grain apart improperly, or the stones wear down too quickly. The stones sit on a sturdy wooden base. A wooden frame extends from the upper stone, stretching out about 8 feet, and at the end of this frame is where the donkey is harnessed. When the donkey walks in a circle, the frame turns, rotating the upper stone. Simple, effective, unchanged for generations. The donkey's name is ferox, which means fierce or wild in Latin. It's a joke, really, because ferox is possibly the gentlest, most patient creature you could imagine. He's a grey donkey, medium-sized, probably about 16 years old now. Marcus bought him 10 years ago from a farmer who was selling off some of his animals. Ferox had already been trained to mill work, which made him more expensive, but also more valuable. A donkey that already knows the work, that won't balk or resist, is worth the extra cost. Marcus takes excellent care of Ferox. A miller's entire livelihood depends on his animal. If the donkey falls ill, or goes lame, or simply dies of old age, the mill stops. Oh, you can turn a mill by human power. There are mills in Rome operated by slaves pushing the beams around. But it's exhausting work. A man can do it for a few hours, perhaps, but not all day, every day. You need an animal, a donkey, a mule, sometimes a horse, occasionally even an ox. So Ferox is fed well. He has a comfortable stable. His hooves are checked regularly. When he seems tired, he's given rest. Marcus talks to him throughout the day, gentle words of encouragement. After 10 years together, they understand each other. Ferox knows the routine. He knows when it's time to work and when it's time to rest. He does his job with patient, steady reliability. Before we begin our day with Marcus, let's take a moment to understand just how important this work is. How vital milling is to the Roman world. Rome is a city of perhaps 1 million people. Some estimates put it even higher. Feeding that many people is a monumental challenge. Most of what they eat is grain wheat, primarily, but also barley, emmer, and spelt. This grain comes from all over the empire. Egypt is the breadbasket of Rome, sending enormous quantities of wheat up the Nile to Alexandria, then across the Mediterranean. Sicily provides grain. North Africa, the provinces of Africa Proconsularis and Numidia, sends grain. Even distant Britannia exports grain in good years. The grain arrives at Ostia, Rome's port city, at the mouth of the Tiber. From there, it's loaded onto river barges and brought up the Tiber to Rome itself, where it's stored in massive warehouses, the Horea. Some of this grain is distributed free to Roman citizens as part of the annona, the grain dole that helps keep the city's poor fed and politically content. The saying goes, give them bread and circuses, and they'll be happy. The grain dole is the bread part of that equation. But grain, in its whole form, isn't immediately edible. You can't just eat wheat berries. Well, you can, but they're hard and difficult to digest. To make grain useful, to make it into something you can bake into bread or cook into porridge, you need to grind it into flour, and that requires mills. Hundreds of mills across the city and in the surrounding areas. Small mills like Marcus's, operated by one man and one donkey. Larger operations with multiple mills. And the truly massive water mills built on the Janiculum Hill, where the aqueducts provide water flow strong enough to turn huge mill wheels. Every day, all across Rome, mills are turning. Grain is being ground. Flour is being produced. And bakers are taking that flour and transforming it into bread. The bakeries of Rome work around the clock. They have to keep up with demand. Walk through Rome at any hour and you'll smell bread baking. It's one of the constants of urban life. Marcus's mill is a small part of this enormous system, but it's an essential part. The bakers he works with depend on him. The families who bring their grain to be ground depend on him. In his own small way, he's helping to feed Rome. And that's no small thing. So, let's begin. Let's step into Marcus's world. Let's experience a day in his life. From the dark hours before dawn to the quiet of evening. Let's feel the rhythm of his work, the pattern of his days. Let's understand what it meant to be a miller in ancient Rome. Take a deep breath. Relax. Let yourself settle into the story. There's no hurry. We have all night. The room is dark. Completely dark. The kind of darkness that only exists in the hours before dawn, before even the faintest hint of light touches the eastern sky. In this darkness, Marcus wakes. He doesn't wake to an alarm. There are no alarm clocks in ancient Rome, no mechanical devices to jolt you from sleep at a predetermined hour. Instead, Marcus wakes the way people have always woken when they follow the rhythms of the sun and the demands of work. Naturally, gradually, his body's internal sense of time, telling him that the night is ending and the day is beginning. For a moment, he lies still. His eyes are open, but in the absolute darkness of the room, it makes no difference. He can't see anything, but he can hear. Next to him, his wife Livia breathes softly, slowly, the gentle rhythm of the sleep. She'll wake soon, but not yet. From the next room, he can hear very faint sounds, the shifting of one of the children in their sleep, a small mumble. Titus probably. The boy sometimes talks in his sleep, unintelligible murmurs that fade back into silence. Marcus's back aches. It always does in the morning, a dull throb in his lower back, a stiffness in his shoulders. Years of lifting heavy sacks of grain, bending over to sweep flour, adjusting the heavy millstones. All of this has left its mark on his body. He's only 43, but he feels older. Physical labor ages you. There's no way around that. He sits up slowly, carefully, trying not to disturb Livia. The bed is simple. A wooden frame with leather straps stretched across it. A mattress stuffed with wool and straw on top of that. Blankets of rough wool. It's not uncomfortable, but it's not particularly soft either. In winter, they pile on extra blankets. In summer, they use fewer. Now, in early spring, they're somewhere in between, cool enough at night that you want covering, but not so cold that you wake up shivering. Marcus swings his legs over the side of the bed, his feet touching the floor. The floor is cool, terracotta tiles that have absorbed the nighttime chill. He stands, stretches carefully, feeling his back protest a little, then gradually ease. His body knows this routine. It's done it thousands of times. In the darkness, Marcus moves by memory and feel. He knows where everything is. His tunic is draped over a wooden chair near the bed. He picks it up, pulls it over his head, adjusts it. The fabric is wool, heavy enough to provide warmth, but it's thoroughly impregnated with flour dust. There's no point in wearing anything clean to work in a mill. Within an hour of starting work, you'll be covered in fine white powder anyway. It gets into everything. Your hair, your clothes, the creases of your skin. You breathe it. You taste it. After a while, you don't even notice. He wraps a leather belt around his waist, cinching the tunic. Then he feels for his sandals, simple leather sandals, worn and shaped to his feet. He slips them on. Finally, he reaches for his heavier cloak, a woolen garment that he drapes over his shoulders. The mornings are still cool, and the mill is open to the air. He'll need the warmth. Before leaving the bedroom, Marcus pauses. In one corner of the room there's a small niche in the wall, the lararium, the household shrine. He can't see it in the darkness, but he knows exactly where it is. Small terracotta figures of the household gods, the Lares, stand in the niche. There's also a small figure of Vesta, goddess of the hearth, and another of Mercury, god of commerce. Marcus isn't an especially religious man, but he's not irreligious either. He observes the customs. He makes the appropriate offerings. It seems wise to keep the gods favorably disposed. In the darkness, Marcus whispers a brief prayer. Nothing elaborate, just a request for a good day, for health, for protection for his family, for continued prosperity. He touches his fingers to his lips, then reaches out and touches the shrine. A gesture of respect, of devotion. Then he turns and makes his way through the house. The layout is simple. The bedroom where he and Livia sleep, a smaller room where the children sleep, a main room that serves as living space and dining area, a small kitchen area with a hearth, and a courtyard at the back. The house is attached directly to the mill structure, which means Marcus never has far to go to work. Just out the door, and he's there. He moves quietly through the darkness, one hand trailing along the wall for guidance. His feet know the way, past the doorway to the children's room, through the main room, past the cold hearth where last night's cooking fire has burned down to nothing but ash, and to the door that leads outside. He lifts the wooden latch and pushes the door open. Outside, the world is still dark, but it's a different kind of darkness. Not the absolute black of the windowless room, but the deep blue-grey of pre-dawn. The sky still holds stars, though they're beginning to fade. The air is cool and fresh, carrying the scent of dew, of earth, of the distant Tiber River. There's a faint smell of wood smoke in the air. Somewhere, someone has already started their morning fire. Marcus stands for a moment in the doorway, breathing in the cool air, letting his eyes adjust to the dim light. The neighborhood around him is mostly silent. Here and there he can see the faint glow of lamplight in a window, other early risers beginning their day. A rooster crows in the distance, then another answers. Dogs bark, a brief exchange, then quiet again. The mill stands nearby, a dark shape in the pre-dawn gloom. Marcus can just make out the outline of the roof, the wooden frame of the grinding mechanism, the covered area where the millstones wait. Everything is still and quiet, waiting. But first, before the mill, Marcus needs to tend to Ferox. The donkey is the foundation of everything. Without Ferox, there is no work today. Without work, there is no income. Without income, well, the thought doesn't bear dwelling on. Marcus crosses the short distance to the stable, a small structure adjacent to the mill. It's simple. 4 posts supporting a slanted roof, 3 sides enclosed with wooden planks. The 4th side open to allow access. Inside, Ferox stands in the dim light, a patient grey shape. The donkey's head is lowered, ears relaxed. He might have been dozing. Donkeys can sleep standing up, like horses, though they do lie down sometimes too. "Good morning, old friend," Marcus says, softly. His voice is quiet, gentle. He's always spoken to Ferox this way, like a friend or a colleague rather than just an animal. Perhaps it's foolish. Perhaps the donkey doesn't understand or care. But it feels right. They spend their days together, after all. They share the work. Ferox's ears swivel toward the sound of Marcus's voice. The donkey lifts his head slightly, makes a soft snuffling sound. A greeting, perhaps, or just acknowledgement. Marcus reaches out and runs his hand along Ferox's neck, feeling the coarse hair, the warmth of the animal's body. Ferox leans slightly into the touch. "Time to start another day," Marcus murmurs. "But first, breakfast. You've got to eat, keep your strength up." In one corner of the stable, Marcus keeps supplies. A large clay jar of water, sealed to keep it clean. A wooden bin containing barley and chopped hay. He pours water into a carved wooden trough. The water splashes softly, catching what little light exists. Ferox immediately lowers his head and drinks, his muzzle breaking the surface of the water, his throat working as he swallows. While the donkey drinks, Marcus measures out feed. A few handfuls of barley, good quality grain, plump kernels, some chopped hay for roughage. He puts this in a feeding trough. Ferox, finished with water, moves to the feed and begins to eat. Slowly, methodically, grinding the grain between his flat teeth. The sound is rhythmic and peaceful. Crunch, crunch, crunch. While Ferox eats, Marcus inspects the animal carefully. This is part of the daily routine, an essential part. He runs his hands down each of Ferox's legs, feeling for heat or swelling that might indicate injury. He lifts each hoof in turn, checking for stones lodged in the sole, checking the condition of the hoof itself. A donkey with sore feet can't work. Regular hoof care is essential. Everything seems fine. Ferox's legs are cool and sound. His hooves are in good condition. Marcus paid a farrier to trim them just 2 weeks ago. The donkey's eyes are bright and clear. His coat, though dusty and rough, looks healthy. There's no sign of illness or injury. "Good," Marcus says, patting Ferox's shoulder. "You're doing well? Just keep staying healthy for me, Ferox continues eating. unconcerned. To the donkey, this is just another morning, indistinguishable from yesterday's morning, from tomorrow's morning. The same routine, endlessly repeated. And perhaps there's comfort in that. Perhaps Ferox, in his simple animal way, is content with the predictability of his life. Fed well, treated kindly, his work within his capabilities. There are worse fates for a donkey in the Roman world. While Ferox finishes his breakfast, Marcus turns his attention to the mill itself. He crosses from the stable to the covered mill area. The light is growing now. The sky to the east is beginning to lighten from deep blue to a paler shade. Not quite dawn yet, but approaching it. That magical time when the world holds its breath between night and day. The millstones are large and imposing even in the dim light. The lower stone, the meta, is fixed in place on a stone base. It's shaped like a cone, about 3 feet tall, narrower at the top than at the base. The upper stone, the catelus, rests over it. This stone is the distinctive hourglass shape. Wide at the top where grain is poured in, narrow in the middle where it fits around the meta, and wide again at the bottom where the grinding surfaces meet. Marcus walks slowly around the mill, inspecting it carefully. He runs his hand over the catalyst, feeling the surface. The stone is cool and slightly rough. This roughness is important. It's what grips the grain and crushes it. Over time, with constant use, the stones become polished, smoother. When that happens, they become less effective at grinding. Eventually, they need to be redressed, their surfaces roughened again by a specialist with chisels and hammers. It's expensive work, and Marcus tries to extend the time between redressings as much as possible. But it's inevitable. The stones wear down. It's the nature of the work. For now, though, the stones feel adequate. Not perfect. They could probably use redressing within the next few months, but adequate for now. The wooden frame that connects to the catillus extends out from the mill like a long arm. At its end is where Ferox will be harnessed. The donkey walks in a circle, and as he walks, the frame rotates, turning the upper stone. The whole mechanism pivots on a central wooden ost, reinforced with bronze fittings. This pivot point is critical. If it seizes up or becomes too stiff, the donkey has to work much harder, and the whole operation becomes inefficient. Marcus checks the pivot carefully. He presses against the wooden frame, testing how freely it moves. It turns, but there's slight resistance. Time for more grease. He retrieves a small clay pot from a shelf, rendered animal fat, saved from cooking. He scoops out a generous amount and works it into the pivot point, pressing it into the joints, coating the surfaces. The fat is slightly rancid smelling, but it works beautifully as lubricant. After working it in thoroughly, Marcus tests the frame again. Much better. It swings smoothly now, with barely any resistance. He checks the wooden frame itself, looking for cracks, for joints that might be coming loose. Wood under constant stress can fail suddenly, and if the frame breaks while the mill is operating, it could injure Ferox or damage the stones. But everything looks solid. The frame is made of good oak, well seasoned, and Marcus maintains it carefully. Satisfied with his inspection, Marcus gathers the other tools he'll need for the day. A wooden paddle for sweeping flour from the collection channel around the base of the stones. several large shallow baskets for holding flour, a sieve made of stretched cloth in a wooden frame for sifting out bran and coarser particles, clean linen sacks for bagging finished flour. All of these are arranged within easy reach of the mill. The sky is definitely lighter now. The stars have faded completely. The eastern horizon is touched with gold. Dawn is moments away. Marcus returns to the stable. Ferox has finished eating and stands patiently, looking almost expectant. The donkey knows the routine as well as Marcus does. "Ready to work, then?" Marcus asks. He picks up Ferox's harness from where it hangs on a wooden peg, a simple arrangement of leather straps and bronze rings. He slips it over the donkey's head, adjusts it so it sits comfortably, buckles the straps. Ferox stands perfectly still throughout this, an old hand at being harnessed. Marcus takes hold of the lead rope and guides Ferox out of the stable, across to the mill. The donkey's hooves make soft clipping sounds on the packed earth. At the mill, Marcus positions Ferox at the end of the wooden frame and attaches the harness to the frame with bronze clips. Everything is secure, properly fitted, safe. The first sacks of grain are already waiting, sitting on a low wooden platform near the mill. These were delivered late yesterday by Publius, a baker who operates a shop about half a mile away, closer to the city centre. Publius is one of Marcus's regular customers. Every few days, he brings grain to be ground, and Marcus grinds it for him in exchange for a portion of the flour. It's a good arrangement, mutually beneficial. Publius gets reliable milling service without having to operate his own mill, and Marcus gets steady work and payment in kind that he can use to feed his family or trade for other goods. Marcus hefts one of the sacks. It's heavy, perhaps 40 pounds. The sacks are made of rough linen, tied at the top with a cord. He carries it to the mill, sets it down beside the catalyst, and unties the cord. The mouth of the sack opens, revealing golden wheat kernels. The grain has already been cleaned, winnowed to remove chaff, and hand-sorted to remove stones and other debris. It's ready for grinding. The sun breaks the horizon. Golden light spills across the landscape, and suddenly everything in is transformed. What was shadowy and indistinct becomes clear and sharp. The mill, the stable, the house, the neighborhood around them, all are revealed in the warm morning light. Marcus takes a wooden scoop and dips it into the sack of wheat. The kernels rattle and shift with a pleasant sound. He pours the grain into the central hole in the catillus, the opening at the top of the hourglass-shaped stone. The grain disappears into the mill, falling down into the space between the upper and lower stones. He steps back, takes a breath, and speaks to Ferox. "All right, my friend? Let's begin?" Marcus clicks his tongue softly, a sound Ferox knows well. The donkey leans forward slightly into the harness, and the wooden frame begins to move. Slowly at first, the initial inertia requiring effort, but then settling into motion. The upper millstone begins to turn. The sound that fills the air is steady and continuous, a low, grinding sound as stone moves against stone. Not harsh or jarring, but constant, rhythmic, almost hypnotic. Underneath this is the softer sound of Ferox's hooves on the packed earth. Clip, 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 as the donkey walks his circular path. The wooden frame creaks slightly with each revolution, a comfortable creaking like an old ship settling. all of these sounds blend together into a kind of music. The music of work. The music of the mill. Marcus pours more grain into the hole. The trick is to maintain a steady supply. Not too much. If you overload the stones, the grain doesn't get crushed properly, and you end up with coarse, uneven flour. Or worse, the stones can jam entirely, requiring you to stop everything, clean out the grain, and start over. Not enough grain is wasteful too. The stones are doing their work, whether there's grain between them or not. Empty stones just wear against each other, accomplishing nothing, shortening their useful life. So Marcus watches carefully, maintaining a steady flow. Scoop of grain, pour it in. Wait, another scoop, pour. The grain disappears into the mill, falls between the stones, and begins to be crushed. The grinding happens in the narrow space where the stones meet. As the upper stone rotates, its surface scrapes against the lower stone's surface. The grain kernels caught between them are crushed, broken down, pulverized. The whole kernels become smaller pieces, then flour, then finally a fine powder. As this happens, the ground material works its way outward from the narrow center of the stones toward their wider edges and eventually emerges from between the stones entirely. Around the base of the lower stone, Marcus has carved a shallow circular channel. As the flour emerges from the stones, it falls into this channel. Slowly, gradually, the channel begins to fill with pale powder. Fresh flour has a distinctive smell. Clean, slightly sweet, wholesome. It's one of the most pleasant smells Marcus knows. After all these years, he still appreciates it. He lets the flour accumulate for a while, then uses his wooden paddle to sweep it from the channel into a large shallow basket. The flour is still slightly warm from the friction of the grinding. It's soft and fine, though at this point it contains everything. The finest flour, coarser particles, flakes of bran, a bit of dust from the stones themselves. Later, he'll sift it, separating the different grades. The finest flour is the most valuable, used for the best bread and pastries. The coarser material is cheaper, but still useful for common bread. Even the bran can be used for animal feed or very cheap bread, or added to garden soil. Nothing is wasted. In a world without modern abundance, waste is unconscionable. Every bit of the grain must be used. Ferox walks his circle, around and around his path, forming a groove in the earth. This groove has deepened over the years. The donkey walks the same path every day, and slowly, incrementally, his hooves wear a track into the ground. The donkey's head is lowered, his gait steady and unhurried. He's not straining or struggling. This work is well within his capabilities. It's not exciting, certainly, not stimulating, but it's not cruel either. It's just work. The kind of work a donkey can do day after day without suffering. Marcus settles onto a wooden stool positioned near the mill. From here, he can watch everything. Monitor the grain supply, watch Ferox, sweep the flour as it accumulates. This stool is where he'll spend most of his day. He's worn a smooth depression into its seat over the years, shaped to his body. As he works, his mind begins to wander. This is one of the peculiar things about work like this. Physically, it requires attention, but not constant, intense concentration. There's space for thought, space for the mind to drift. He thinks about practical matters first. Always the practical matters. The mill's roof needs repair. A few tiles came loose during a storm last month. Oh, and he's temporarily patched the gaps with pieces of wood and old cloth, but it's not a permanent solution. He needs to buy proper tiles and hire someone to install them properly, or do it himself if he can. But tiles cost money, and hiring labor costs money. And money is always a consideration, always something to be balanced and managed. He thinks about the merchant's offer from yesterday, the man who came proposing a regular supply arrangement. It could mean steady income, reliable work. But it would also mean commitments, schedules, possibly having to work longer hours to meet quotas. Is it worth it? He's not sure. He'll need to discuss it with Livia. She has good instincts about these things. He thinks about Ferox's age. The donkey is probably 16 or 17 now. Marcus isn't entirely certain. When he bought Ferox, the previous owners said the donkey was about 6 or 7, but who knows if that was accurate. Regardless, Ferox is no longer young. Donkeys can live into their 20s, sometimes even their 30s if they're well cared for, but their working years are limited. Eventually, Ferox will be too old to work. What then? Marcus has been setting aside a little money when he can, saving for the eventual need to buy a new donkey. But a good working donkey costs at least 50 denarii, maybe more. A trained mill donkey could cost 70 or 80. That's a substantial sum. Perhaps he should buy a younger donkey now, while Ferox can still work, and train the new one alongside him. That way, when Ferox finally retires or dies, there will be no interruption in the work. But that means feeding 2 donkeys, which means additional expense, and it means finding space for another animal. The stable is really only big enough for one. These are the kinds of decisions that occupy a small business owner's mind, not grand strategic plans, but practical, immediate concerns. How to keep things running, how to maintain equipment, how to plan for the future while managing the present. The sun climbs higher. The morning light, golden and gentle at first, becomes brighter, clearer. The air begins to warm. Early spring in Rome can be variable. Some days are quite cool, while others hint at the summer heat to come. Today seems like it will be pleasant. Warm but not hot. Good weather for working. Marcus gets up periodically to check on Ferox. He pats the donkey's neck, speaks to him encouragingly, offers him a little water from a bucket. The donkey drinks, then continues his circular path. Around and around. The stones keep turning. The flour keeps falling. After about 2 hours of continuous work, Marcus has ground through the first sack of wheat. The basket beside the mill is piled with flour, several pounds of it, pale and soft. He carefully pours this flour into a clean linen sack, ties the top and sets it aside. Then he opens the second sack of wheat and begins the process again. The neighborhood around the mill is fully awake now. He can hear voices, people talking, calling to each other, children playing somewhere nearby, their high voices carrying on the air. A cart rumbles past on the street, its wooden wheels clattering on stone pavement. Someone is singing. A simple work song, the melody rising and falling. The first customer of the day arrives. A woman named Flavia, a widow who lives in a small apartment about 3 streets over. She's probably in her 50s, thin and work-worn, dressed in a simple brown tunic. She's carrying a small sack, which she struggles with slightly. It's clearly heavy for her. "Good morning, Marcus," she calls as she approaches. Marcus stands, smiles, walks over to meet her. "Good morning, Flavia. How are you today?" Well enough, she says, setting down the sack with obvious relief. My back isn't what it used to be. Getting old, I suppose. Aren't we all? Marcus says sympathetically. He's 43. Flavia is perhaps 10 years older. In the ancient world, that makes them both fairly old. Life expectancy isn't what it will be in modern times. If you make it past childhood diseases, past the dangers of childbirth for women, past accidents and wars for men, you might live to 50 or 60. Beyond that, you're fortunate. What do you have for me today? Marcus asks. Barley? Flavia says. About 10 pounds, I think. Enough for a few days of bread. Barley is cheaper than wheat, which is why Flavia buys it. Wheat makes better bread, lighter, more flavorful, but barley is more affordable. The poor eat barley bread. The wealthy eat wheat bread. It's one of the small markers of status in Roman society. Marcus lifts the sack, gauging its weight. Yes, about 10 pounds. I can have it ground by this afternoon. Will you come collect it, or should I have it delivered? Flavia considers. I'll come collect it, probably mid-afternoon if that's all right. Perfectly fine, Marcus says. He takes a small wooden tag from a collection he keeps, scratches Flavia's name onto it with a nail, and attaches it to her sack. This way, he won't mix up different customers' flour. I'll have it ready. Flavia thanks him and departs. Marcus sets her barley aside. He'll grind it later, after he finishes the baker's wheat. Different grains are usually kept separate, ground in batches, to avoid mixing. More customers arrive through the morning. A slave from a larger household brings 3 heavy sacks of wheat. His master wants fine flour, the man explains, suitable for pastries. This will require careful work. Grinding the wheat twice to achieve the finest possible texture. Marcus quotes a price, 12 sestertii, and the slave nods, counts out the coins from a leather pouch, and hands them over. Marcus feels the weight of the bronze coins in his palm before tucking them into a small locked box he keeps secured under his stool. Coin payments are less common than payment in kind, but when they come, they're welcome. Coins can be used for anything: repairs, new equipment, offerings at the temple, treats for the children. Another customer arrives, a young man Marcus doesn't recognize. He's perhaps 20, with the calloused hands of someone who works with his body. He carries a modest sack of wheat. Are you Marcus the miller? The young man asks. I am. My name is Gaius. I'm apprentice to a carpenter in the next neighborhood. My master sent me to ask if you could grind this wheat. He usually goes to Decimus's mill, but Decimus is ill this week and has closed his operation. I'm sorry to hear Decimus is unwell, Marcus says. He knows Decimus, another miller, operating a similar business about a mile away. They're not exactly friends, but they're not competitors either. There's enough work for everyone. I hope it's nothing serious. A fever, I heard, Gaius says, but yes, I hope he recovers quickly. Marcus accepts the wheat, provides a wooden tag, and quotes a price. They agree to payment in kind. Marcus will keep a portion of the flour. Gaius says he'll return tomorrow to collect it. Between customers, the work continues its steady rhythm. Grain into the stones, stones turning, flour falling. The sound is constant, a background to everything. That low grinding sound, the footsteps of ferox, the creak of wood. Marcus finds himself thinking about his life, about how he arrived at this point. It's strange how paths unfold. If he had never been freed, he'd still be a slave, probably still working in his former master's household. His life would have been entirely different. No Livia, no children, no mill, no independence. Just service, day after day, year after year until death. But his master had freed him, and that single act had opened up possibilities. The freedom to work for wages. The freedom to save money. The freedom to marry. Slaves could form relationships, but they couldn't legally marry. Their children belonged to their master, not to them. But as a freedman, Marcus could marry legally. His children were his own, free-born Roman citizens with full rights. The gratitude he feels toward his former master is genuine and deep. He doesn't know why he was chosen to be freed. He had never been particularly close to his master, had never received special favor. But whatever the reason, he was freed, and he had made the most of that freedom. Not everyone does. Some freed slaves struggle. Without skills or resources, without patrons to help them, they end up destitute, barely surviving on the margins of society. Marcus had been fortunate. He had found work quickly. He had learned a valuable trade. He had saved carefully, lived frugally, and eventually established his own business. Now he was a property owner, a business owner, a citizen in good standing. His children would grow up free, with opportunities he never had as a child. Cornelia might marry a tradesman, a shopkeeper, maybe even a minor official. Titus could learn a trade, milling perhaps, if he wanted to follow his father, or something else. Carpentry, masonry. The possibilities weren't limitless, but they existed. This is what freedom means, Marcus thinks. Not just the absence of a master, but the ability to build a life, to make choices, to plan for tomorrow. He realizes he's been lost in thought, and the grain supply is running low. He quickly scoops more wheat into the millstones. The rhythm must be maintained. As the morning progresses toward midday, the rhythm of work remains steady and unchanging. Marcus has now been grinding grain for about 4 hours. The baker's first 2 sacks of wheat are complete, their flour bagged and set aside. He started on the 3rd sack. The pile of flour beside the mill continues to grow. Ferox continues his circular path. The donkey has settled into that particular state of motion that seems almost automatic. His body knows what to do without conscious thought. His eyes are half closed. His ears relaxed. He's not asleep exactly, but he's not fully alert either. He's simply working, existing in that space where the mind doesn't need to be engaged, because the body knows the routine so completely. Marcus understands this state. He experiences it himself. When you do the same work every day, your hands learn the movements, your body learns the rhythm, and your conscious mind is free to wander. It's not unpleasant. In fact, there's something almost meditative about it. The repetition becomes soothing rather than tedious. The sun is high now, approaching its zenith. The light is bright and clear, washing out colors slightly. The temperature has risen. It's genuinely warm now, comfortable but starting to edge toward hot. Marcus can feel sweat on his forehead, on the back of his neck. The physical work isn't strenuous. He's mostly sitting, occasionally standing to add grain or sweep flour. But the warmth of the day adds a layer of fatigue. He takes a moment to drink water from a clay jug bowl he keeps nearby. The water is cool and clean, drawn from the public fountain this morning. It tastes slightly mineral, the way water from Rome's aqueducts always does, but it's refreshing. He drinks deeply, feeling the coolness spread through his body. A thought occurs to him. How much water does Rome consume? The aqueducts bring millions of gallons into the city every day, flowing constantly, feeding fountains and baths and private homes. It's an engineering marvel, one of Rome's great achievements. Clean water, available to virtually everyone. Even the poor can access public fountains. Compare that to other cities, where water is scarce, where people drink from rivers or wells that might be contaminated. Rome's water system is one of the things that makes the city livable, that makes it possible for 1 million people to exist in one place. Marcus has never seen an aqueduct up close. Not the great arched structures that carry water across valleys. But he's seen the distribution systems, the networks of lead and terracotta pipes that run under streets and through buildings. He benefits from them every day. The public fountain 3 streets over where he fetches water. The public baths, where he goes once a week to clean properly. All of it depends on the aqueducts. It's humbling, in a way, to be part of such a vast system. The grain he grinds comes from Egypt. The water he drinks comes from springs in the mountains. The oil he uses comes from Spain or Greece. The wool in his tunic comes from sheep raised in the countryside. Everything is connected. Everyone depends on everyone else. A small child appears near the mill, watching with wide eyes. A little girl, perhaps 4 years old, with tangled dark hair and a grubby tunic. She's probably from one of the nearby apartments. Marcus sees her sometimes, playing in the street with other children. "Hello?" Marcus says gently, not wanting to startle her. The girl doesn't respond, just continues watching the mill with fascination. The turning stones, the walking donkey, the falling flour, to a child, it must seem magical. "Would you like to see how it works?" Marcus asks. The girl nods shyly. Marcus gestures her closer. "This is Ferox," he says, indicating the donkey. He walks in a circle, and that makes the stones turn. The stones crush the grain into flour, and flour is what we use to make bread. The girl inches closer, still cautious. She reaches out one small hand toward Ferox. Marcus nods encouragingly. "You can pet him. He's very gentle." The girl touches the donkey's flank, just briefly, then pulls her hand back. But she's smiling now. "Do you like bread?" Marcus asks. The girl nods vigorously. "Everyone likes bread," Marcus says with a smile. Bread is life. Without mills like this one, there would be no flour. Without flour, there would be no bread. So in a way, Ferox and I help feed everyone. The girl seems to consider this, her small face serious. Then she smiles again and runs off, back to wherever she came from. Marcus watches her go, feeling a small warmth in his chest. It's good to be reminded sometimes of why the work matters. It's easy to get lost in the daily routine, to see it as just a job, just a way to earn money. But it's more than that. It's essential. It's part of the fabric of civilization. More customers come and go through the late morning. A man bringing emmer, an ancient grain that's becoming less common, but is still used by some traditionalists. A woman bringing spelt. Each one is greeted, their grain is accepted and tagged, Terms are agreed upon. Marcus's wooden box of coins grows slightly heavier. His stack of sacks waiting to be ground grows slightly taller. He works through them methodically. After finishing the baker's wheat, he starts on Flavia's barley. Barley is slightly different from wheat. The grains are smaller, harder. They require slightly different handling. Marcus adjusts his technique subtly, adding the grain a bit more slowly, watching the grinding carefully. The flour that emerges is slightly different in color, not quite as pale as wheat flour, with a subtle grayish tint. The smell is different too. Barley flour has an earthier, more rustic scent. Not unpleasant, just different. It reminds Marcus of his childhood, when barley bread was what he ate most often. Slaves generally didn't get wheat bread. That was reserved for citizens, for free people. Barley was slave food, prisoner food, cheap food. Now he can afford wheat for his own family. Not the finest grade, but decent wheat nonetheless. It's a small marker of his improved circumstances, but a meaningful one. The food you eat says something about your place in the world. As he works, Marcus thinks about his children. Cornelius is 7 now, old enough to begin learning useful skills. Livia has been teaching her to spin wool, to weave, to cook simple foods. Domestic skills that any woman needs. But Marcus sometimes wonders if Cornelia might learn more. There are schools in Rome, though they're not free. A grammaticus could teach her to read and write more than just basic words. It's unusual for girls to receive much formal education, but not unheard of, especially in families with ambition. Could they afford it? Probably not. Not really. School fees are expensive, and their income is modest. But maybe someday, if the business continues to do well, if they save carefully, it's something to aspire to. And Titus, he's only 5, still very much a child. But in a few years, he'll need to begin learning a trade. Marcus hopes the boy will want to learn milling. It would be good to keep the business in the family, to pass it down. But if Titus wants something else, Marcus won't force him. He remembers his own lack of choice as a slave. He won't impose that on his son. The sun reaches its highest point. Noon. The time when the day pauses, when the heat is at its peak, when most sensible people retreat to shade and rest. Marcus looks at Ferox. The donkey has been working for about 5 hours now, walking his endless circle. It's time for a break. "All right, old friend?" Marcus says, standing and stretching. His back protests. Sitting on a stool for hours leaves its own kind of stiffness. "Let's rest for a bit." He unhitches Ferox from the wooden frame. The donkey stops immediately, standing still, his head lowered. He's probably as ready for a break as Marcus is. Marcus leads Ferox back to the stable. He pours fresh water into the trough, and Ferox drinks long and deep. Then more feed, barley and hay. The donkey has earned it. While Ferox eats, Marcus checks him over again. Still no signs of problems. The donkey is holding up well. "You rest now," Marcus tells him, "an hour or so. Then we'll finish the day's work." He leaves Ferox in the stable and walks back to the house. Inside, the temperature is slightly cooler. The thick walls and tile roof provide some insulation from the midday heat. Livia has been busy. She's baked bread this morning using flour from yesterday's work. The smell of fresh bread still lingers in the air, warm and welcoming. She's also prepared a midday meal. Cold vegetable soup made with water, olive oil, and whatever vegetables were available and affordable. Today it seems to be mostly onions and lentils, with some herbs for flavor. There's bread, of course, for dipping, some olives, a bit of cheese, slightly crumbly but still good, a small piece of salted fish, a luxury, but Livia found it cheap at market yesterday because it was nearing the end of its freshness. Good timing, Livia says, smiling at him. She's a small woman, shorter than Marcus, with dark hair pulled back from her face. She's 35, though the years have marked her as they mark everyone. Lines around her eyes, a certain weariness in her posture. But she's still lovely to Marcus. Still the woman he fell in love with 10 years ago. They eat in the small courtyard behind the house. It's partially shaded by the fig tree, which helps. Cornelia sits beside her mother, eating carefully, trying to be neat. Titus, less concerned with neatness, has olive juice on his face and breadcrumbs on his tunic. "How is the day going?" Livia asks. "Well enough," Marcus says, between bites of bread. The bread is good. Livia is a skilled baker. She knows exactly how to mix the flour and water, how long to knead, how long to let it rise, how to judge when the oven is the right temperature. "Several customers. Good work. Ferox is doing fine." "And the merchant's proposal?" Livia asks. "Have you thought more about it?" Marcus has, though his thoughts are still unsettled. "I'm not sure," he admits. "The steady work would be good, reliable income. But I worry about the commitment. What if something happens? What if Ferox falls ill? What if I can't meet the quotas some week?" Livia nods thoughtfully. She's always been practical, good at seeing both sides of a situation. "But we could perhaps use the steady income to prepare for those possibilities," she suggests. "If we knew what we'd be earning each week, we could save more regularly, build up a reserve. Then if something did happen, we'd have resources to draw on." It's a good point. Marker considers it. That's true. And maybe we could afford to buy a second donkey sooner rather than later. Train him while Ferox is still working. "Exactly," Livia says. "I think the proposal merits serious consideration. But you should negotiate. Don't just accept what they offer. Make sure the terms are fair." Marcus smiles. His wife is wiser than he gives her credit for sometimes. "I'll talk to them," he says. "See if we can reach reasonable terms." They finish eating in comfortable silence. The soup is simple but nourishing. The bread is satisfying in the way that only fresh bread can be. The olives provide salt and richness. It's not a feast, but it's enough. More than enough. They're not hungry, not struggling. That itself is a blessing. After eating, Marcus lies down on a wooden bench in the courtyard, in the shade of the fig tree. The midday rest is traditional in Rome. A brief escape from the heat, a chance for the body to recover before the afternoon's work. He doesn't exactly sleep, but he drifts in that space between waking and sleeping, his mind quiet, his body still. He can hear the sounds of the neighborhood around him. Voices talking, laughing. The cry of a street vendor somewhere, selling something. He can't quite make out what. A baby crying, then being soothed. Life continuing, all around him, in thousands of small iterations. Rome is a city of 1,000,000 souls, each living their own life, following their own patterns. A million stories, most of which will never be told, never be remembered. Marcus is one small thread in an enormous tapestry. When he dies, the mill will pass to someone else. Perhaps Titus, perhaps someone who buys it. The work will continue. The grain will still need to be ground. Life will go on. There's something both humbling and comforting in that thought. He doesn't need to be exceptional. He doesn't need to be remembered. He just needs to do his work well, care for his family, live with integrity. That's enough. That's everything. About half an hour passes. The shadows have shifted slightly, the sun having moved a bit in its arc across the sky. Marcus sits up, feeling marginally refreshed. The brief rest has helped. His back feels slightly better. His mind feels clearer. Marcus returns to the mill and retrieves Ferox from the stable. The donkey has rested and eaten and seems ready to continue. Marcus harnesses him again, attaches him to the wooden frame, and the work resumes. The afternoon has its own character, distinct from the morning. The light is different, brighter, harsher, more direct. The air is warmer, and the warmth brings a certain sleepiness, a heaviness. But the work continues regardless. The stones still need to turn. The grain still needs to be ground. Marcus works through his remaining orders. The fine flour for the wealthy household is next. This requires special care. First, he grinds the wheat in the normal way, producing ordinary flour. Then he takes this flour and runs it through the mill again, this time with the stones adjusted to be extremely close together. The result is an exceptionally fine powder, almost like dust, perfect for delicate pastries. It takes longer and requires more attention. He has to feed the flour back into the stones very carefully, a little at a time. Too much, and it clogs. Too little, and the stones are grinding air. But eventually, after patient work, he produces the fine flour the customer requested. He bags it carefully in the cleanest linen he has, ties it securely, and attaches the wooden tag. Next is the emmer from the traditional old man. Emmer is one of the ancient grains, one that Romans have been eating for centuries, long before wheat became common. It's tougher to grind than wheat. The grains are harder, more resistant. But Marcus knows how to handle it. He adds the grain slowly, lets the stones do their work gradually. The flour that emerges is slightly coarser than wheat flour, with a distinctive nutty aroma. As he works, a younger miller stops by, Quintus, who operates a mill on the other side of the neighborhood. Quintus is probably 25, relatively new to the trade. He's come to borrow a tool, a specialized chisel used for dressing millstones. His stones have become too smooth, and he needs to roughen them. Of course, Marcus says, retrieving the chisel from his collection of tools. Take it, just return it when you're finished. Thank you, Quintus says gratefully. I didn't want to have to buy one just for one use. These tools are expensive, Marcus agrees. No point in everyone buying everything. We can share. They chat for a few minutes. Quintus mentions that Decimus, the miller who's ill, seems to be recovering. The fever has broken, and he should be back to work in a few days. That's good news. Marcus makes a mental note to visit Decimus when he has time. Bring him some bread or wine as a gesture of friendship and support. Quintus departs with the borrowed chisel, and Marcus returns to his work. The afternoon stretches on, measured out in sacks of grain, in baskets of flour, in the endless circular path of Ferrox's hooves. More customers come. Some are regulars Marcus knows well. Others are new, sent by friends or neighbors who recommended his mill. Each one is greeted, their grain is accepted, terms are agreed upon. The work continues. Marcus finds his mind wandering again, as it often does during the long hours of repetitive work. He thinks about the grain he's grinding. Where did it grow? In what field? Under what sky? Who planted it, tended it, harvested it? How many hands touched it before it arrived here? The wheat from Egypt. It probably grew in fields along the Nile, irrigated by the river's floods. Egyptian farmers have been growing grain for thousands of years, using methods refined over millennia. The grain traveled by river to Alexandria, then by ship across the Mediterranean, weathering storms and tides. It was unloaded at Ostia, transported by barge up the Tiber, stored in warehouses, sold and resold, until eventually it ended up in the sack that Publius the baker brought to this mill. And now Marcus is grinding it into flour, and Publius will bake it into bread. And someone will eat that bread, perhaps a merchant, perhaps a craftsman, perhaps a housewife, perhaps a child. That bread will sustain them for a day, give them energy, keep them alive. Food is life. The chain that connects Egyptian fields to Roman tables is long and complex, involving thousands of people, dozens of processes. And Marcus is one small but essential link in that chain. He thinks about the miller's trade, about its place in society. Millers aren't aristocrats, obviously. They're not senators or equestrians. But they're not at the bottom of the social ladder either. They're skilled craftsmen, property owners, small business operators. They're respectable. A miller's daughter could marry a shopkeeper or a minor official without anyone thinking it inappropriate. A miller's son could pursue various trades and be accepted. It's a good life, an honest life, and Marcus is grateful for it. The sun begins its slow descent toward the western horizon. The harsh afternoon light softens, becoming golden again. Shadows lengthen across the mill floor, across the packed earth where Ferox walks his circle. Marcus can feel the day in his body now, the accumulated fatigue of hours of work. His back aches, his shoulders are stiff, his legs are tired from standing and walking. But it's the good kind of tired, the tired that comes from productive work, from a full day well spent. He's nearly finished with the day's orders. Just one more sack to go, the spelt that a woman brought this morning. Spelt is similar to wheat, but slightly different. It produces a flour that's good for certain types of bread, slightly nutty in flavor. He pours the spelt into the millstones and watches as Ferox continues his patient circle. The donkey must be tired too, but he doesn't complain, doesn't resist, just continues walking, as he has for hours, as he does every day. "You're a good friend, Ferox," Marcus says quietly. "I don't tell you that enough, but you are. I couldn't do this without you." The donkey's ear twitches, acknowledging the voice, but he doesn't stop walking. The stones keep turning. The flour keeps falling. As the sun approaches the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Marcus finally completes the last of the day's work. The spelt is ground, sifted and bagged. All the orders are complete. The mill floor is swept clean. The tools are put away. That's enough, Ferox, Marcus says, and this time there's a note of finality in his voice. Good work today. You can rest now. He unhitches the donkey from the wooden frame. Ferox stops immediately, standing still, his sides rising and falling with deep breaths. The donkey has walked many miles today, going nowhere, just circling endlessly. But that's his work. That's his purpose. And he's done it well. Marcus leads Ferox back to the stable one last time. He gives the donkey extra feed tonight. He's earned it. Fresh water, good hay, a generous portion of barley. While Ferox eats, Marcus grooms him carefully, brushing the flour dust from his coat, checking once more for any signs of injury or illness. Everything looks good. The donkey is tired, but healthy. Sleep well, my friend, Marcus says, patting Ferox's shoulder. Tomorrow we'll do it all again. He leaves the donkey to rest and returns to the mill for his final tasks of the day. He sweeps the floor thoroughly, collecting every stray grain, every bit of spilled flour. Nothing is wasted. Even the small amounts he sweeps up will be added to sacks, sold or traded. He checks the millstones one more time, examining them in the fading light. They're holding up, though they're definitely starting to show wear. Within 2 or 3 months, they'll need to be redressed. He'll need to hire a stonecutter, which will cost perhaps 15 or 20 denarii. Expensive but necessary. You can't run a mill with worn stones. He covers the mill with a large piece of canvas, protecting it from dew and night moisture. He arranges the sacks of finished flour neatly, ready for customers to collect. Some will come this evening, others tomorrow morning. He double-checks the wooden tags, making sure each sack is properly identified. Finally, he goes to his small locked box and counts the day's earnings. 3 customers paid in coin, a total of 20 sestertii. Not a fortune, but decent. Combined with the flour he's kept as payment from other customers, it's been a good day. They'll eat well. They'll pay their bills. They might even save a little. Marcus secures the box and takes it inside the house. The light is fading now. The world entering that beautiful transitional time between day and night. The sky is deepening from gold to purple to deep blue. The first stars are appearing. The air is cooling, becoming comfortable after the warm afternoon. Inside the house, lamps have been lit. Their warm glow spills through the windows, welcoming. Marcus can smell dinner cooking, something with onions and herbs. His stomach rumbles. He's hungry after the long day of work. Livia is at the hearth, stirring a pot. Cornelia is setting out bread and cups. Titus is playing with a small wooden toy horse that Marcus carved for him last winter. Good timing, Livia says, smiling at Marcus. Dinner's almost ready. Marcus washes his hands and face in a basin of water, scrubbing away the flour dust that coats his skin. The water turns cloudy white. He dries himself with a cloth and joins his family. The evening meal is more substantial than lunch. Livia has made a thick soup with lentils, onions and carrots, seasoned with herbs and a little olive oil. There's fresh bread, always bread, some cheese, a few dried figs for sweetness. They eat together in the main room, sitting on benches around a wooden table. This is Marcus's favorite part of the day, when the work is done, when the family is together. when there's nothing to do but enjoy each other's company. Cornelia chatters about her day. She helped her mother with various tasks, fetching water from the fountain, grinding spices in a small hand mortar, feeding the chickens. She's proud of her contributions, and Marcus and Livia are careful to praise her. Titus shows off his toy horse, making it gallop across the table, making clip-clop sounds. He's easily entertained, still very much a child. Marcus tells them about the merchant's proposal, about his conversation with Livia at midday. Cornelia listens with interest. She's old enough to understand that these decisions affect the family. Titus isn't really paying attention, too focused on his horse. "I think I'll accept," Marcus says, with some negotiations on the terms, "but fundamentally, I think it's a good opportunity." Livia nods. "I agree. It's time to think about growing. Not drastically, but steadily." After dinner, as darkness fully settles over the neighborhood, the family spends a quiet hour together. Livia works on her weaving, her hands moving with practiced skill. Cornelia practices her letters on a wax tablet Marcus bought for her. She's learning to read and write, taught by her mother who learned from her own mother. Titus eventually grows sleepy, his head nodding. Livia takes him to bed, singing softly. Marcus sits by lamplight, running through the day in his mind. The customers served, the grain ground, the money earned, the challenges managed. It's been a good day, an ordinary day, but a good one. He thinks about tomorrow, which will be much like today. More grain to grind, more customers to serve, more hours with the ferox walking his circle, the stones turning, the flour falling. The same work, repeated endlessly. Some might find this monotonous, some might find it boring, stifling. But Marcus finds it satisfying. There's comfort in routine. There's dignity in work well done. There's meaning in contributing to something larger than yourself. Feeding people, sustaining life, being a small but essential part of civilization's machinery. He's not a great man. He'll never be written about in new histories. He'll never be remembered beyond a generation or two. But in his time, in his place, he matters. His work matters, his life matters. As the lamps burn low and the house settles into nighttime quiet, let's step back for a moment. Let's think about what we've witnessed today. We followed Marcus through a single day, one day out of thousands. A day that was, by his standards, entirely ordinary. Nothing dramatic happened. No crises. No great joys or sorrows. Just work. Just life. Just the quiet rhythm of routine. And yet, isn't this what most of life is? Not the dramatic moments we remember, but the ordinary days we forget. The work we do, day after day. The meals we eat. The conversations we have. The small kindnesses we show. The quiet persistence of living. History often focuses on the exceptional, on emperors and generals, on battles and conquests, on great achievements and terrible disasters. And those things are real, they happened, they shaped the world. But they're not the whole story. For every emperor, there were millions of people like Marcus. People who worked hard, raised families, contributed to their communities in small but essential ways. People who made civilization possible by doing their jobs, day after day, year after year. The grain that Marcus ground today will become bread tomorrow. That bread will feed perhaps 100 people. Those people will have energy to do their own work, whatever that may be. Some might be craftsmen, making tools or furniture or clothing. Some might be merchants, facilitating trade. Some might be teachers, passing knowledge to the next generation, each one contributing their part. And all of it depends on bread. All of it depends on grain being ground into flour. All of it depends on millers like Marcus and donkeys like Ferox, and the simple, patient work of turning stones. There's a line from a Roman writer, Cato the Elder, who said, "It is a difficult matter to gain fame by a work of this kind, for the writer never gets any thanks." He was talking about his own writing, about how chronicling ordinary agricultural practices doesn't bring glory. But the observation applies more broadly. The ordinary work of the world, farming, milling, baking, building, cleaning, teaching, caring, this work rarely brings fame. It doesn't get celebrated in poetry or commemorated in monuments, but it's the foundation of everything else. Without it, nothing else is possible. Marcus understands this in his quiet way. He doesn't need fame. He doesn't need recognition. He just needs to do his work well, care for his family, live with integrity. That's enough. That's everything. As you drift off to sleep tonight, perhaps you can carry that thought with you. Your own work, whatever it is, matters. The small things you do each day, the routines you follow, the responsibilities you fulfill, they're not insignificant. They're not meaningless. They're the stuff of which life is made. Think of the mill, the steady turning of the stones, the patient walking of the donkey, the falling flour, grain by grain, accumulating slowly into something substantial. That's how progress happens. That's how civilization is built. Not in great dramatic leaps, but in small, steady, persistent effort. Marcus will wake tomorrow and do it all again. Ferox will walk his circle again. The stones will turn again. The flour will fall again. And somewhere, someone will eat bread made from that flour, and they'll have strength for another day. It's a cycle as old as humanity itself, as old as agriculture, as old as settled civilization. For thousands of years, people have been grinding grain. For thousands of years, people have been baking bread. For thousands of years, people have been doing the ordinary work of living. Marcus is part of that long chain. So are you. So are we all. And there's something beautiful in that. Something profound in the ordinary. Something sacred in the simple act of doing your work well, day after day, not for glory or recognition, but because it needs to be done. Because it matters. The lamp flickers, the house is quiet. Outside, Rome sleeps, though never completely. Even in the depths of night, there's always someone awake, someone working, someone keeping the machinery of civilization turning. But for Marcus, the day is done. He's earned his rest. Tomorrow will come soon enough, with its own demands, its own work. But tonight, there's peace. There's satisfaction in a day well spent. There's the comfort of family, of home, of work completed. Sleep well, Marcus. You've earned it. And you, listening to this story, sleep well too. Let the rhythm of the mill carry you into dreams. The turning stones, the walking donkey, the falling flour, A rhythm as steady as a heartbeat, as reliable as the sunrise. Let it soothe you. Let it calm you. Let it remind you that there's dignity in ordinary work, meaning in simple routines, value in persistence and patience. The mill will turn again tomorrow. The grain will be ground. The flour will fall. Life will continue in its quiet, patient way. And that's enough. That's everything. Good night.